We are live. Okay. Happy Friday, everyone. We're here for another episode of the live show. I have the requisite tea. My guest, to my shock and horror, did not bring tea, but that's okay. We're going to get through this together. We'll find a way through. Need to have that sip. Oh, and I forgot about our fun live game that we're now playing. What is Adam putting into his mouth? This is for audio only listeners. Have a listen. What could that be? What flavor of tea? Can you discern the flavor of tea based on this sound? One more time for our listeners at home. So that's that's some ASMR for your ears, as well as a fun new game that I am imagining is going to drastically boost our listener count. I'm throwing spaghetti at the walls, guys. Okay. So today I've got a guest I'm really excited to bring on to chat with. It's my friend Sakeb Nazim from law school, and we've kept in touch for, I guess it's been almost 15 years at this point. What does my law society say? 2013 is when I passed the bar. So that means around 2010 is when I began in law school, 2009 probably. So anyhow, we got lots to talk about. We're going to jam on all sorts of stuff. It's actually been a lawyer heavy week for me. Last night, I was having dinner with a friend of mine who's a lawyer here locally. And then this morning, literally just before the live show, I was having breakfast with a friend of mine who I went to law school with. He went back home to Ontario to raise a family, but the allure of Victoria kept calling him back here. And finally, it won out, and they just moved back here. So it's cool. It's fun. The a lot of times, less these days, but when I first left law and I was practicing executive coaching, leadership consulting, this kind of work I'm in, people would ask me if I missed law, and the answer was like, kind of. The thing that I really loved about law, put this thing on my desk here so I'm not distracted. The thing I really loved about law was that it's an opportunity to really practice brilliance a lot. You really get to use your mind a lot in the practice of law, because you're basically solving really complicated puzzles or setting up really complicated puzzles. And then simultaneous to that, it's the ultimate, like, if we think of wit as sort of like the agility of the mind, the ability to look at something and change the frame of reference. If we think of that as like an aspect of wit, you get to practice a lot of that in law, because you come to this awareness that nothing is really concrete at all. Even a legislature can create a new piece of legislation. They can put a new law into place, and the first thing you learn in like your very first day of law school is that piece of legislation has zero meaning until people have interpreted it. Meaning the courts have to look at it and you say, okay, it's a crime to do X if you're under the age of 17. Okay, what does it mean to be under the age? Does that mean a minute? Does that mean like midnight, that point? Okay, we've got that. What does doing X actually mean? And so you start to realize it's all open to interpretation. And that's part of what's fascinating about law, is that we're drawing these arbitrary lines in a world that is analog, that is not digital. Our world is not discrete. It is not made up of like nice, cleanly divided things. It's all messy, and law attempts to impose a degree of certainty around that. So anyhow, all that to say, you get to be really brilliant. And if I look at my careers, historically, computer science was another place where, as a software developer, I got to practice a lot of brilliance. I got to determine what's the problem we're dealing with, and then, okay, what tools do I need to solve this problem? And then the cool thing about being a software developer is you get to create those tools, and then in the code, and then you use those tools you've just created to solve the problem that you're trying to write code for. And so, part of the way this first manifested for me was that when I left software and went back to school to study law, let's do the part of the show where I move my mic and cause some static. That's good. My producer can deal with that. You're welcome, Dave. when I left to study law and began at school again, one of the first things that was really exciting for me was, oh man, I'm surrounded by people that have really put a lot of thought into their opinions. And I was left with this experience like, even if I disagree with what this person's point of view is, I need to grant it some space because they've afforded time towards it. They put thought into this opinion, and it behooves me to like listen and understand. Of course, that was fleeting. And it took a few years before I was like, okay, now I understand. Now I can get all I really think I got better at doing from like my ways of being at the time was I learned how to get better and more sophisticated at dismissing people for more sophisticated reasons, but I just became more efficient at doing what I was already doing. So it goes. Anyhow, one of the things that a lot of people, or at least some, will share about law school is that many people who are quite smart, quite brilliant, they have a lot of brilliance, they'll find their way into law school because they're really brilliant and they're not sure what else to do. That's not to say that's the only reason you find your way into that career or that study, but it is a place that tends to aggregate a lot of brilliant people. And it's really thrilling being around that. It's really enriching to be around people that can sink their teeth into topics and look at it from a bunch of different angles with a lot of altitude. And so when I left the practice of law, the concern I had was, oh man, this expression of my brilliance, this place where I get to really be super smart, so to speak, or at least exercise my brilliance, might not be there in this new career. And it took me a while to create that. And that's the thing I want to kind of maybe highlight here before we bring Sakeb on. And Sak, I lean away from Mike to burp. Anyone remember Tezonde? These are my topical references for you. 6'7", Tezonde. So anyhow, I left law and was sort of like, there isn't this ready-made place where I get to be brilliant. And what I learned through the work with my coach and deepening into this transformational work is the way most of us view the world is that this opportunity to express some aspect of ourselves is a function of the circumstances we find ourselves in. So like over here, I get to have an experience of being very adventurous. But when I come home from vacation or when I stop being an entrepreneur and I come over here and I'm in my corporate job, all of my adventurousness gets put on hold. And then what we do is this fancy kind of calculus where we're trying to manage work-life balance. I need to be adventurous over here, but then at work I have to be buttoned up. And, how do I create that? And what I learned through my own transition and work with this is there's an opportunity to express all parts of ourselves in all of our careers. We just have a story that's not acceptable. And then from our story, we create a reality that fits it. And we have to, of course, learn how to calibrate, how to work with it. But the funny thing is that the thing we are yearning for, that we often look to a career shift to provide us, the career shift is not the thing. The real breakthrough comes when we start to look at like, what is it I'm truly yearning for? And how am I blocking that now? How am I keeping that out? I was coaching someone yesterday and we were looking at, their sense of fire. There was like this desire to be almost hungry or to have that part of themselves activated where they could really lean into something, really bite off something. And as we looked into it, we could see that one, the opportunity was available for them to create that if they were willing to, but they weren't creating it because there was an associated fear with it. And this is kind of the human nature, is that we yearn for some kind of experience that doesn't seem to be available. And we believe that changing our circumstances will provide that experience, which it will sort of temporarily. But the deeper practice, the deeper transformational shift is where we start to look at like, how am I blocking that which is available? If you think of these things that are important to you, like the sun, how am I putting clouds in front of it? And if we can start to catch that, then we can do something quite different, which is we can learn to develop the ability to create, in this example where we're talking about me, how can I create brilliance and the opportunity to express that all the time with my clients? And then I may still want to go on like a math retreat. If I'm like, I really want to like I want to go on a Sudoku retreat where I really get to express brilliance in a particular way and structure, but I'm not doing it because I am experiencing a paucity of it over here. I'm not dying of thirst for it in my job, and then I have to run off to do that thing. I can do that thing from a place of fullness, from a place of abundance. And so that just makes it, when we can create our lives in that manner, stuff like work-life balance stops being so important because our life and our work are integrated. So there's not this need to balance. And then we get to sort of like pick and choose what we'd want to do from abundance. We become much more like the people in Star Trek: The Next Generation, 24th century, replicator technology, abundance. It's a post-scarcity world. So now that you don't want for anything, what do you actually want to choose to create in your life? That's what this work is kind of about doing. I've never thought of this metaphor before, but I'm going to hammer this home now that I've gotten my teeth into a Star Trek Next Generation metaphor related to transformational coaching. This is all you're going to hear about on the Transformational Leader for the next 10 years. That's how it is. We're really, truly, we are seeking to create a post-scarcity experience inside of ourselves. And from that place, two things happen. I'm going to distinguish this, and then we're going to bring on Sakeb. From a post-scarcity experience, transformational result in ourselves, two things happen. The first is that we suddenly be like, because we have been using our urgency, our fear, our not enoughness, my ass is on fire, and therefore I have to run to the next pool of water to put it out. Because we've been using that as our fuel for so long, we often experience this kind of, it's almost like, there's this idea of the dark night of the soul. This is almost like the boring light, the boring daylight of the soul. You're sitting there and it's all fine, but it feels kind of listless because up until this point, we've been using our scarcity as our prime motivator. And so people create that shift and then they find themselves a little bit like, I don't know what to do, because up until this point, what there was to do was born out of a need to alleviate some pain. And now they've addressed that. And once we sit in that long enough, eventually we come to a point where we're like, there is actually nothing I have to do. So now that I can set that aside, what do I want to do? And more importantly, what do I choose to do? What do I want to put myself towards? Where do I want to direct my energy? What do I want to make my life about if it's all on the table and if it's all free? And if I'm able to have the full experience and expression of myself regardless of what I choose, then what? That's a cool place to operate from. Okay. Anything else I want to share about going on for me as of late? Yes, there is. Well, maybe not. I think that'll come for another episode. So I'm going to briefly talk about Sakeb and then we'll get him on. So Sakeb and I met. Actually, you know what, Sakeb? Turn on your mic. Turn on your damn camera. Let's add you to this stage. Yeah. Banned from studio? No, add to stage. Oh, yes. There you are in the stage. That's a nice looking shirt, by the way. You're one-upping me and I don't appreciate it at all. I'm going to change the note we sent out that says, wear something grimy. Okay, so did we meet in law school? You come together, you start with like a sort of, what would we call it? Like a homeroom or a home group, for the first 2 weeks, there's sort of like a get to know each other. Here's a small group you're part of. Did we meet in that? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I remember that, but I feel like we, at least as classmates, a friendship came much later, but at
Yes.
least as classmates, we connected when you and I were preparing property law for Professor Howell.
Oh,
That's
yes.
when we really bonded when we the two of us were studying together.
Yes, so I'm going to give everyone some flavor around this because my experience in property law, I was very excited because the law I was interested in was intellectual property. We had the professor who taught that. I was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. I like to ask a lot of questions in class. My experience was that this professor would prefer if instead of students, he just had statues made of stone that just glared at him, because I would put my hand up all the time and he would make eye contact with me and then continue to speak. And it drove
I
me
agree.
bonkers. And the other memory I have of this is that you and I were studying, we were looking at old exams to like determine, okay, if this is the sort of question we can expect. We went to ask him, do we have the right, thinking on this? And he said, I don't answer questions about old exams. And that was as much as we got out of him.
Yeah, that matches up with my recollection as well.
Cool. So, okay, first of all, first question, am I saying your name right? Is it Sakeb or Sakeb?
First one.
Sakeb, emphasis on the
Yes,
second syllable.
perfect.
Okay, excellent.
Equal emphasis is how I say it, but you said it perfectly the
I
first
said
time.
good
Yeah.
the second time. Okay, great. Okay, so give us like a little bit of your background, because I'm trying to remember, I think you came from Bangladesh, right?
Yes, I am from Bangladesh. I was born there. I grew up there,
Yeah.
and then I got a
When did you come to
scholarship.
Canada?
So I got a scholarship to do my undergrad in the U.S. in Virginia. And so as soon as I finished that, started working there. And as soon as I started working there, and this is a while back, but
Yeah.
even then I felt something is not right about this country. And so I decided to move to Canada. And so I did. And then, yeah, and then soon after that, I went to law school, and that's when we met. But just like you, I had a different career before law school.
Right.
I was in the software industry. So that was my bachelor's degree background, and that's the industry I worked in for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I heard your podcast. So in terms of what led you down to law school, and my story is sort of similar. There was this angst. Okay, this isn't enough, and also I was bored. Also, this whole idea of working for a corporation just wasn't syncing with me. Wasn't didn't feel right to me, and so I wanted to do something else. And out of that brainstorming process, I ended up with wanting to practice law.
Did you envision working like more like an entrepreneur then? You were saying like,
No,
no, okay. So you were like,
I
corporation isn't quite the thing. What did you have in your mind?
I wanted to be a prosecutor. So that
Oh,
was
okay.
one of the roles that just I felt like, okay, if I go to law school and if I could end up doing that,
Yeah.
then it all worked out. If not, I can always go back to software if that's the
Right.
worst
Of
case
course.
scenario. Yeah.
Yes.
So that was my thinking when I went into law school.
And so you said you did some brainstorming. So you're like, okay, law school, were there other things on the plate that you were contemplating as well as that? Or was it like, I did brainstorming, I wrote the word law school, that's the end of the brainstorm?
No, I considered so many things. I considered being a clinical psychologist. I considered
Oh,
being
cool.
a dentist. I considered many different things.
Yeah.
And process of elimination, I visited a dental professor at a dental clinic at a university in the US, for example. I spoke with psychologists like just to understand what they do for a living, how their
Wow.
day-to-day life is like.
You did some real work.
Yeah, so I did a lot just because I didn't want to make the same mistake a second time, right?
I
Because
see.
I
So the
find,
software felt like a bit of a mistake. Is that right? Is that fair?
I mean, when I went into undergrad, I was only 18. I mean, what does anyone know when they're 18, right? It wasn't a mistake from pragmatic perspective,
Yeah.
and I got a great job right out of university, and I needed that at that stage of my life. So I don't regret any of that for that reason. But
Right.
the point is, I could never have known until I was exposed in that environment, until I actually started working, until I started becoming an independent professional living on my own, that, okay, what this life really meant. Before that, I was a full-time student, right? And before that, I was with my parents. So I didn't really figure things out until I started working in the software industry in terms of
Right.
what feels right and what doesn't.
So when you interviewed the dentist or the dental professor,
Yeah.
what was that like? Like, what did they share? What was your experience?
The long story short, the reason I eliminated myself is like when I saw how steady your hand had to be, I could totally see I would keep dropping stuff into the patient's mouth. So, because I drop food even when I'm eating sometimes. So I knew I was going to drop stuff into the patient's mouth. So that was the easy choice. So, So that
Did
that was yeah, heart of it. That was the primary reason. Yeah.
did you consider medicine as well?
I did, but
Yeah.
again, I didn't want to go back to school for like, because my bachelor's degree was in economics and computer science, and to do medicine would mean like studying all
Long
those
time.
biology courses again, and I just didn't want to be in school that long. School is not where I thrive. School is just the means to an end. So I
Uh-huh.
didn't want. I wanted to be school the minimum amount of time to get to where I wanted to be. And so that's why, but dental school was a possibility for that reason because I didn't have to go to school for that long,
Yes, I
as
see.
was, say, psychology or pharmacy or something like that. Some of the
Ah,
other
yes.
options I considered. I didn't want to do a PhD either because that level of academic research just doesn't appeal to me. And so law also fit the bill for that reason as well, that not only does it have the diversity of careers, specifically doing the kind of work I am doing right now, which is
Yeah.
prosecution, but also I only needed to be in school for 3 more years, right?
Yes.
And so it just felt right and worked out well.
Okay. And so, uh, was there a reason you chose UVic, like here in Victoria?
Beautiful place. I
Smart.
I I got into UFC as well in Calgary
Yeah.
and a couple of other schools, but I felt like okay, I've always been an adventurer, a traveler. So I felt like, okay, before I settle down, I want to see what the West Coast, living in the West Coast is like. I visited Vancouver, Victoria, but it's different living there. So I just
Sure
wanted to
is. Yeah.
see how that felt like. It's a great school as well.
Yeah. That
And one of the
helps.
other big draws is the core program. Like I just mentioned, that I didn't want to make the same mistake again. So
Right.
the core program at that time, maybe even now, UV Law is the only law program that has the core program where I could, after studying for a year, I could work in different fields. And,
Yes.
and so I worked for the city of Victoria. I worked for the Public Prosecution Service up in Yellowknife. So that those experiences also kind of helped me figure out, okay, no, this is exactly what I want to do.
Hmm. Okay. So I want to get into what you do now, prosecution. I'm especially interested to hear about the experience of getting ready to go into court, but we'll come to that in a moment. Like,
Hmm.
what was your experience of law school? Like, how did you find that? How did you feel about it? All of that stuff, or any of that stuff?
Yeah, that's mixed feelings I have about law school for many reasons. Um, well, it was intense. I expected
Mm,
that, especially uh, I wanted to get the best grades that I could get. So because I knew that where I wanted to end up is a very competitive field. So I
yeah.
knew that
Did you come
academics
in with good grades? Like, had you done really well in your undergrad?
yeah, I had good grades and I had
Yeah.
good LSAT scores and all that too. But I knew that it's a very competitive market, and
Yes.
and especially there's only so many prosecutors the government hires, and
Yes,
it's a
indeed.
high demand job. So I knew that okay, my law school grades had to be good. So eh, to many people, I sometimes compare it with being in prison. Like I sometimes really felt like I was in a sort of a prison, as in my
Say more
life
about
was
that. Like, in what way?
just as my life was so restricted. Like even though
Ah,
I mean, of
yes.
course, there was those beautiful days where Matthew, Tom, my roommate, and I'll bring him into the conversation later because for other reasons. But he and I would go to the ocean and we'd study by the
Yes.
ocean. It was so beautiful to be in Victoria for that reason. But at the same time, it was my every minute of my life was so calculated. I'd never lived life like that. That
Yes.
finish class, go home, finish cooking, then hit the books, do
Yeah.
this, finish this assignment or whatever I was working on. And it just, especially the first year. The first year is, as you know, is intense. We're doing 10 courses, right?
Yes.
And the first year grades are the most important ones. So
Is
it
that
was
so?
it
Is that like kind of widely how it's held?
uh, just because of the number of courses, it has a
I see.
much more impact on your
Gotcha.
GPA in
Yes.
that
Yeah.
sense. So and also it's all new, right? So
Yes.
that adds to the challenge. So I knew I didn't want to mess up. So I just maybe I could have be, been more chill. I don't know. On retrospection maybe, but at
Yes.
that time I was like, okay, I can't take a chance here. And so it was intense in terms of the time, the regimented that way. All I was
Yes.
really doing was going to school and studying. And so in that sense, it felt like a prison, and also in the prison that everybody's like at first everybody seemed interesting, but soon everybody seemed boring because
Mm,
everybody was just talking about the same thing because
Yes.
that's the only
You're kind
shared
of in a
experiences.
fishbowl the way prison is as well. Like everyone knows everyone's business on some level.
Yeah, that too,
Yes.
and we're all doing the same thing, and very few of us are really excited about it. There were people who were, and I respect them for it, but many people were either in my boat or some just didn't care at all. But
Uh-huh.
either way, it was not a fun, exciting stage of my life.
Mm,
Um, the other challenge was me being who I am, in the sense of uh, I s- I didn't always feel seen in terms of my capabilities, as in me
mm,
being from Bangladesh, having an accent.
right.
Automatically, there were people, sadly there were classmates who saw me lesser than them,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
now it doesn't bother me, none of that. And even in now professional life, sometimes I face that, but it
Yeah.
doesn't bother me. But as a young man at the time, it did bother me at the time that what makes you think you are any smarter than me, because I know you're not.
Yeah.
But it created anger and resentment in me at times, because I
Mm.
faced that in law school. So all of those combined, sort of like, uh, put it that's why it's a mixed feeling. that's
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the,
for
that's the
sure.
best way I can express it.
How did you like so that all makes sense. In what way did you experience it? Was it like you'd be on a group project and you'd volunteer something and it would be dismissed out of hand, or would it be that people would look past an argument you would put forward? Like how would that actually be felt?
Yes, yeah, a couple of ways. I mean, nobody would directly say like
Of
that you
course.
were
Yeah,
lesser
yeah.
than me. But first, you could there's the vibe, the energy that
Yeah.
you can feel from somebody who is just treating you different from others, or
Yeah.
just seeing you as something else. And the other is that some comments, night comments like, "Oh,
Mm,
you must have really worked hard." Like, I mean, in one sense it sounds positive, but at the same time it's very condescending. Does it?
sure.
The reason that you produce this great work means you must have worked twice as hard as me. Otherwise, you
Yes.
couldn't have, right? So that's an
Right.
assumption that many people I faced. Even some of them weren't intending to mean it in that sense necessarily, but that's an assumption they had in their head. Oh, if this guy is producing this good work or giving this great answer, he must have really hit the books much harder than me.
Boy, it's so
And that's an
fraught, isn't
assumption,
it?
right? Yeah, that's an assumption. You don't know that, right? You don't know
Yeah.
how hard I worked, or how hard, whether
Well,
you
I
hard
related
I
to you
worked
as
harder than
lazy
you.
the whole time.
You're right. No, that's a pure assumption. But at times I could feel that assumption is coming from that
Yes.
place, that you must have worked harder if you're better than me, or you're
Yes.
performing better than me, uh,
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
be more accurate.
it's really fraught, like there's
Yeah.
just so many layers of complexity and uh one of our members of our cohort, our friend Caleb, who was First Nations, and I think in line possibly for chiefdom. I'm not totally sure, and I won't make assumptions, but like I was asking him one day, like, I've heard First Nations, I've heard First Peoples, I've heard Native Americans. What do you want me to call you? What's the appropriate thing for me to say? And he said, if you say it with respect, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
And that's always stuck with me because it's sort of like what I'm hearing and what you're sharing is who we're being underneath what we say, because it is so fraught, and I should say, lose myself trying to manage for all of these layers of psychology and complexity and like, shit, I don't want to say the wrong thing. And then Caleb's message to me always just cuts through it so cleanly, like Alexander's sword through the Gordian knot. Say it with
Right.
respect. That's what there is to do. And then I can, of course, clean up if it does make a mess. That's all good. There's still stuff for me to learn, but those words always come back to me in those moments when I'm getting
Yeah.
like
I.
complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
100%. And that's why I mentioned the energy first, because
Yes.
when someone has that energy towards you, respect, love, compassion, you feel it. The words matter less.
Yes. Okay, so um challenging. Yeah, the adage in law school that I remember them sharing with us on our first day was like first year they're gonna scare you to death with like, oh my god, all of this work. You go pick up your books and it's just this skyscraper of voluminous texts.
Yes.
You build some good arm strength lifting them. And then they say second year they're going to work you to death because you're just going to work hard and hard and hard. And then third year they're going to bore you to death. And the arc of that, for those of you who haven't gone to law school or aren't lawyers, is The first year, it's overwhelming how much there is to process and synthesize and understand. The second year, it's just you're still trying to get on top of that, and you're just present to all the work. By the time you get to the third year, you've kind of integrated this way of thinking, and you start to realize, I mean, the thing that people in third year told me in my first year was, you're not even going to buy books in your third year. And I remember thinking in my head in response to them, fuck you, you lazy bastard. I'm going to buy all the books. You don't know me. I'm committed. Third year, I didn't buy any books. They knew better than I did, it turns out. So what, so there was like the challenge just of the material. There was the challenge of sort of like, you know, just your accent, or, you know, whatever, your background, your cultural background, blah, 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 all of what that brought with it. For me, some other things I found challenging in law school were being more mature as a student, which is a fancy way of saying old here, not saying more evolved or elevated. I found it challenging to devote the time that I saw some of my peers devoting. I found it challenging to, I worked in my undergrad. I had to do work, but it was kind of a given I was going to get one of the top scores. I was just reliable for that. I found it challenging to maybe surrender that and to realize, like, I'm going to have to work really hard and maybe not get the best grade. I found that challenging. And then the other thing I found challenging was, I found, you know, there was lots of stuff happening socially, but I found it very challenging for me to integrate with that. I wanted to be cool and a part of stuff, and I couldn't seem to find my way into it. And, you know, we could spend years looking into why that was. That's less interesting. That's just some of the things I found challenging, sort of adjacent or as part of my experience. Is there anything along those lines that you see was challenging for you?
Uh, to a lesser degree in the aspect that you were discussing, because you went into law school not knowing exactly where you wanted to end up.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, where you ended up is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
But
I didn't have the straight line you did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When I remember when we spoke, I mean, you kept changing. The first year, what I asked you, you gave me one answer. Second year and third year, like until life coach is when you ended up in the third year, right? So
yeah.
it evolved. It was so I can only imagine that is even way more challenging in many ways than my situation, where my biggest uncertainty was, and that was the challenge, the uncertainty is whether after all this pain, am I gonna end up where I want to be? Because otherwise, it's a waste, right? So
yes.
It's kind of a similar uncertainty challenge. Your uncertainty was even broader, more vague. Okay, what do I really want to do? I know I didn't want that, but what do I want? That's what I heard from you during law school.
Yeah.
But for me, it was like, okay, I know what I want, but what if I don't get it? Like, then what happens?
Yes. Yeah. One thing I found really challenging was, like, I was pretty good at the doing of it. It wasn't what I wanted to do with all of my being, but like I got good grades in law school. I could bring myself to do it, and there were aspects of it I really liked a lot. You know, like for me, when I articled, which for those that aren't lawyers in Canada is basically a year of apprenticeship underneath a lawyer so that you don't screw up someone's legal liability and livelihood. And one of the things I really enjoyed was sort of sitting there with my principal, the person I was working with, and we'd call it like throwing the football back and forth, just being like, okay, well, what about this argument? And then we'd kind of argue with it down to the point where we're like, okay, got it. That's where that leads to. Okay, back to this. And those aspects were super fun. I really, really enjoyed a lot of that. And then there were some parts that didn't quite work out for me. Okay, so let's talk. You did some co-op work. So you worked a job at the City of Victoria here, and then you did was it your second co-op term up north in Yellowknife? Okay, so that's, for people that don't know Canadian geography, most people know Canada as clustered around the border. Sakeb did the opposite of that. He went very far north where there's a frig ton of mosquitoes and bugs that want to chew you. Was there some mental preparation for that? Or were you just, again, was it like, prosecutor, here's where the money is, or the gold that I'm chasing after, so to speak, that's where I'm going to go? Like, how did that unfold for you?
Yeah. Just to clarify for your listeners, yeah, money prosecution doesn't have money.
Right. Yeah.
But no, it was really I want to be a prosecutor, so what better experience than actually doing the work of prosecution? And
Yes.
because it's Yellowknife, they have a shortage of staff
Yeah.
and lawyers, so there's only jurisdiction where the students, co-op students, get temporary articling so that they can actually appear in court
Yes.
and not do everything, but do a lot of the things that almost nowhere students could do in court. So,
Yeah.
so that's why I chose that particular role. And I'd never seen. I went in the middle of winter. I was there between January to April. So I
That's
didn't see any
ludicrous.
mosquitoes. But the reason I went is I wanted to see the Northern Lights.
Ah,
So
yes.
and that made it worth it. Like it's just for those 3 months, I got my heart's got full of Northern Lights. So
Were
that
you in
was the
perpetual darkness? Is it that far
yes,
north? Okay. Wow.
yes,
Cool.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
almost
no
perpetual,
sun,
I think. Yeah, almost perpetual. Yeah,
like maybe an hour or something of the sun
yeah,
peeking over the
that's right.
horizon.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
So
something.
so and also I got to travel on what is called circuit court. So the judges, the defense lawyers, and the crowns would fly to these remote communities where these indigenous villages are, and they would
Right.
set up a court once a month. And so I got to see that aspect of life in Canada that most people never get to experience. So all of
Hmm.
those were side benefits to being in Yellowknife.
What did you find that work? This is a pointed question. Like, what was the
Mhm.
impact of that work on your heart?
Which work specifically working in Yellowknife?
Yeah. And like, I've got some elaboration, but I'm curious to hear your sort of immediate response to that question. So, like the circuit courts, going to these remote communities,
Hmm.
prosecuting, all of that. What was the impact of that on your heart?
Heartbreaking.
Mm. Can you say more?
Well, those I'm trying to choose my words to make it brief because we can go into this a lot, but
Right.
but basically those communities are not natural communities. Those were
Mm.
what they are called reserves that were made by the government long time back to put these people together in a very unhealthy way, in the sense that they can't live off the land. There's nothing. They're completely dependent on government assistance because there's no other way to live there.
Mm.
And these remote communities, whether it's 50 people or 500 people is the maximum, there's absolutely nothing to do,
Mm.
uh, and which is why it's ripe for alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and every other kind of problem. And it's generational, right?
Yeah.
If children grow up seeing this disturbing scene, there's no other path for them. Like they can't imagine a world. Even to them, Yellowknife is a foreign world. They can't imagine anything outside their this remote kind. Because you have to remember,
Yeah.
just to fly there costs thousands of dollars.
Yes.
That I was going on the government dime as a prosecutor, but it's not a place you can even go for vacation because it's so expensive. And so those
Yeah.
people who make no money at all, who are living on bare minimum government assistance, they how will they ever live and know a better life, right? So
Yes.
it's heartbreakingly disturbing. Like I saw sexual assault, rapes of like brothers raping their sister. Like they're all like teenagers or younger. It's just
Yeah.
really disturbing things that is no
It's like
fault of
crimes
their own.
rooted
They're
in
just
trauma.
yes, yeah, just
Uh-huh.
born into trauma and perpetuating trauma.
Yeah.
It's just, and there's no winners there. Like as a prosecutor, I don't win anything. Nobody
Yes.
wins any of that. There's not a battle that you can win there.
Yeah. It remind like one of the things I really appreciated about our stint at law school was looking. Were you in? Did you have your crim class with me, criminal law with Ben Berger?
No, I had Rebecca Johnson.
Mm. I was very fortunate. And one of the things we looked at in criminal law was like, what's the purpose of this field of law? Is it
Hmm.
vindication? Is it revenge? Is it, you know, kill the offenders, et cetera, which is a really important question. And we rarely look at it. We just sort of act out of reaction to the hurt that a crime perpetuates on us, blah, blah, blah. And that, along with seeing how blunt an instrument the law is, it's really a system of last
Right.
resort. And we can really, it's often, if you imagine a hand cracking a whip, the law takes place at the very after the whip is cracked and the wound has been delivered and then the whip's been put away and the person that cracked the whip is long since gone. It's hard. It's not really a system that's particularly effective at affecting change in those situations. It
In those situations, I agree with you.
mm-hmm. um Okay, how did you deal with that heartbreak?
I just uh, I grew from it. I developed empathy because
Okay.
that was the first time. I mean, it's one thing to read intellectually. Oh yes,
Yes.
you should have empathy. Everybody has difficult childhood.
Yeah,
Many
that must be
people are
tough
in
for
crime.
them.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
to actually experience it, to talk to those people, uh, I saw, even now I see sometimes prosecutors or lawyers being afraid to even get close to certain kinds of
Sure.
people.
Yeah.
But I lost that fear a long time back because, like, especially in that courtroom context, they're all vulnerable. Everybody's there. Nobody's there by choice.
Yes.
Then, and by that time, everybody knows they messed up. So there, it is not. I wasn't driven by fear in those situations. It was just like sadness for their situation. That, oh, this is. I feel sad for them.
Uh-huh.
That this is so that was the beginning of my kind of a realization. Okay, that this is crime is not a black and white issue that most of society makes it out to be.
Yes.
It is far more complex, and most cases it's a heartbreaking story behind every crime,
Yeah.
almost every crime.
Yeah, that's generally been down my line of work. One of the things I've found is um I'm going to use these terms liberally because they mean something different for the context you and I share as background and you live in. But I become more and more present to the fundamental innocence in every single human being, which is to say, it's very rare people act out of malice, and even when they're acting out of malice, it's usually sourced or born out of some underlying issue that life handed them and molded into them, and then there's almost we still have to of course have responsibility and culpability and stuff in the law, but we can hold someone like a parent trying their best with their child. They can hold the child culpable while simultaneously loving them and understanding like this isn't because you are fundamentally a garbage human being.
Right,
You still have to be held to account for your actions because otherwise
right,
nothing works. But
right.
that's a very challenging kind of it's very nuanced. And the
Yes, it is
law
nuanced.
again
Yes,
is
and
can
then the
be
victim too. The victim is real. Somebody who
exactly.
has been
Yeah.
wronged, when sometimes very violently wronged.
Yes.
They deserve sense of justice, which is what drives me, which is why I do what I do. Is
Yeah.
they
So
deserve justice, whatever that means in any particular context.
uh-huh. So how do you hold all of um this heartbreaking and sort of like some of these crimes are, I'm inferring some of this from what you've said, but like some of these crimes are almost a product of the system that these people have been put in or have it imposed on them or, whatever, their background, their trauma. How do you hold all of this for yourself? How do you reconcile it with the work you're doing?
I mean, I should clarify that I was specifically at that moment, I was specifically talking about the situation in the reserves,
Yes.
in back up in North. And
Yeah.
those are, especially in the Northwest Territories, is a really, really challenging, difficult place. So
Yeah.
I don't mean to extrapolate that necessarily everybody faces
That's okay.
those
I did
kind
it
of
for you. Yeah.
situations.
We'll take that
So
as
so
truth
so
that
so not every context is that
yes, of course.
deserves that degree of necessarily heartbreaking sympathy for the perpetrator, right?
Yes.
So
But
and
surely that
so
must be there in and out of your work, I
yes,
assume.
of course.
Okay.
To backtrack a bit. So yes, I did. I don't do criminal prosecution anymore. I should clarify that to begin with. I've left that. But for the beginning stage of my career, when the 2 3 years that I did, uh, I by the time that the case came to court, there was a big passage of time. There was enough time to know what happened. Police had done its investigation. So I tended to be more centered on the needs of the victim
I see.
because the perpetrator did what they did, whether out of anger or whatever, trauma or alcohol or whatever.
Yeah.
They moved on, but oftentimes the victim haven't been able to, especially if it's a violent crime
I
or even a
see.
property crime. So my focus tended to be on, okay, what serves the victim at this stage more, because the victim didn't ask for it, right?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
and regardless of circumstances, in most cases when somebody perpetrated a crime, they had an intention.
Yep.
It wasn't an accident. But for the victim, it was an accident. In most cases, they didn't ask for
They had
any of
even
that.
less, well, no agency.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So I tended to focus more on the needs of the victims and what would serve their well-being more.
Got it. So would it be fair to say you kind of related to the system of justice? Part of what your role was maybe some degree of reconciliation or some kind of
Accountability
accountability. Gotcha.
within our imperfect system. We have an
Right.
imperfect
And making
system.
the victim to some extent bring them back to a state of like rationality to the way things go. Like, yeah, bad things
Yeah,
happen.
that
There's a
that somebody, yeah, if somebody
gotcha.
did something quote unquote wrong,
Yeah.
they just didn't get away with it. They paid some price for it. We
Right.
can agree or disagree about what that price is appropriate or not. That's a different issue altogether.
Yeah.
But at least being able to say, no, he didn't get away with it. He or she didn't get away with it.
Right. Yeah.
To me, that is accountability. So that's the driving force
Uh-huh.
for doing what I do. Otherwise, we would have no society if there was no if the I mean by the society we live in, and most societies there are more good people than bad,
Yes.
and using those words very broadly, of course. But even then, if there was no accountability, we would have no society that we could live in.
Yes. Yeah. The metaphor I use in transformational work is people often we want to learn metaphorically how to ride a bike, whatever the bike represents. I want to become good at connecting with human beings. I want to be able to ask the beautiful woman out. I want to be able to ask for raises at jobs. I want to be able to sell whatever. They want to learn to ride the bike, but as we become adults, what we want is we want to learn how to ride the bike, but we want to do it in such a way that we can do enough studying first that we never fall off the bike, or that if we do fall off the bike, it never hurts. And that just won't work. And it kind of comes back to what you're saying. If there's no accountability, the system falls apart. It doesn't work. There has to be some rails, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah. So
Mhm.
that would be one of the big motivations for doing what I do. That
Makes
gives me
sense.
inherent satisfaction.
Uh-huh. Have you hold on, let me just get my head around this question. I'm also checking to see if I want to ask it. I think I'll maybe share this from my perspective and then just see if there's any thoughts that brings up for you. So there's like when I looked at prosecution or doing stuff like that, I was like, well, but I drive 10 kilometers over the speed limit and I make that okay. There's like places where I nudge in or outside of I operate in what we might call some of the gray area of the law.
Sure.
The law is very clear. 50
Yeah.
kilometers an hour is the speed limit, and you
Yeah.
are, prone to breaking it if.
Yeah.
How do you ever contend
I,
with
I,
that?
drive, I drive way over the limit if that's what you're asking. But
So-
no, my personal ethics is somewhat different. It says,
Yeah.
who am I hurting? That's the question I ask
see.
myself.
I see.
So in the context you're describing, and many other contexts,
Yeah.
we are not hurting anybody just necessarily by breaking the letter of the law.
Right.
So that is my personal paradigm, and I'm not advocating that for everyone necessarily
Yes.
either. But that's how I live life. Is that okay? I ask myself, am I hurting myself or anyone else? So,
But do you find that's not a bit of a slippery slope because my actions never hurt someone until they do, and then
yeah, then there are consequences for that, and then I'm not saying. But it depends. A context based. It's very hard to answer that question purely in the hypothetical.
Of course.
But
yeah.
Driving 10 kilometers over the speed limit or 20 kilometers, can that cause accident? Sure, it can. But even driving at the speed limit can cause accident.
Bit of a gradient then for you.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. These are interesting things. Like, at least for me, I found as I practiced law, I studied practice, whatever, started to see just how gray it is. And I went into it in part, what I was thirsty for was I hate all of these people making terrible arguments. I want a world where there's a nice, clean black and white, and it's very clear, and there's a winner and a loser, and airtight argument wins. And then the very first day, they're like, you're going to discover just how gray all of this is. I was like, crap.
It's true. Very true.
Cool. Okay. So, you finished co-op, you came back, you graduated, and then you started working at a big law firm in Calgary, I think, right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But by
Doing
that
what
time, I
kind of
knew
work?
it was the second biggest corporate law firm in Alberta. So it was a
Wow.
huge corporate law firm of 150 lawyers, and it was is exactly what you envision when is as a major corporate law firm in a TV show or anywhere else.
I know what that
Is
means, but like our audience won't all be lawyers. Like what?
sure.
Tell us about
So
that.
yeah, so the only reason I got that I went into that was because that was the best opportunity that I could get at the time,
Yeah.
and I knew that would open up the doors because you can't straight out of school, nobody's going to hire you as a prosecutor.
Yes.
So, but when they see this big firm name on your resume,
Yeah. Credibility.
it adds, okay, this guy is smart, he knows to how he was hard worker, so all of those, okay, we can train him as a prosecutor. So
Yeah.
that was the means to an end for me.
Yeah.
And what that environment was like was just this uh, uh, lot of very very smart people all the time working, making
Mm.
money, and talking about how to make more money, and doing very complex legal work for big corporations,
Yeah.
helping them make more money.
Yes.
That is the nutshell of what a corporate law firm life is like.
Uh-huh.
And to me, it was just almost as intense as law school, except for the fact that I was making money.
Were you
It,
working more hours at that or in law school?
but different. It was different. I mean, it was more. The work was at least more interesting than studying,
Mm.
archaic property law or something like that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It was more connected to the real world. But yes, it was, as an articling student, as you know, as most places you are expected to do long hours. And so
What were long hours for you?
at the time, yeah, it varied, but I would say, yeah, 10 hours, 10 to 12 hours was pretty normal.
How many days a week?
It could be 6 days, yeah, at least one
Dang.
weekend.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
for that 1 year, it was intense, and sometimes even more. And some students had to work even more depending on what area of law they wanted to get into after articling.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't going to get into that, so I didn't have as much of a pressure. I just didn't want to get fired.
How
Uh,
how how was it for you working? I
was
mean, that's
boring
an.
in many ways because the people,
Do you say
all
boring?
that's all, boring, yeah,
Yeah.
because it
Hmm.
was like I could do the job, but it was like, eh, I knew this is not my life. Like I knew I
Yes.
didn't want to be working for a major. That's the reason I left software industry. And
Yeah.
also the people around, they weren't talking about the things I'm interested in. In my current role, I get to talk about with different lawyers different things.
Yeah.
Uh, Maybe not necessarily the medicine, but many other things I get to talk
Yes.
about.
Yes. Yes.
But over there, it was all based on this work and just kind
Yeah.
of showing how good you are at work, or just a certain
Very hyper
elitism,
focused.
and a certain elitism that, okay, we are the best somehow
Yes.
because we are corporate lawyers. Somehow that there's this thing in people's head, and people who go, especially the younger people who get into it before life really hits them, that there's
Yes.
more to life than, and sometimes that takes 10, 20 years, and then they're depressed, they don't know what they're doing with their life. But as young lawyers or young articling students, they're like, oh wow, we are the
Here's
best.
the place. Yeah.
Here's the place. If you're not here, that means you're not good enough to make it. And so
Yeah.
there was that mentality, and all they talked about was just work or what they're buying with the money they're making, right? So, and neither of those interested me, and the materialism also, like, because what else was there besides materialism? If you work at work for so many hours and you're making a bunch of money,
Yeah.
your only enjoyment is going out and spending that money, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah. You're
that didn't
you're
interest me either.
you're quite lucky. It sounds like to have had some life under your belt. Like I often held with a lot of compassion the people who went to law school with who had done almost the complete law track, right? Like poli
Right.
sci undergrad, that's
Yeah.
pre-law, and then straight A's, maybe A pluses in law school. Good for them, very smart
Right.
people. Then got into the big firm, and it just seemed like they were sprinting and jumping on this treadmill. And to your point, it takes a long time when you're running that fast to realize, like, do I actually want to be running this? Like, is this what I want my life to be about? And my compassion was not from a place of pity or condescending, I know better, or that they don't want. More just, I really hope that this is what they truly want, because this is a very, it's a hyper,
Yeah,
to your point, it's a hyper focused track, and it
right,
takes time to be able to see the bigger picture when you're
right.
that narrowed in. Okay, so you do that, and then that's your year of articling, is that right?
Yes,
And then you get a job with the Crown,
yes. So soon after that, soon after articling, then I got a job with the Crown, and then I was at Crown for a couple of years,
and you've been
and
happy ever
then
since, and that's that.
no, that's the thing. So the criminal law is a rewarding in many ways as a Crown because you
Yeah.
get to serve these real victims.
Yes.
But at the same time, I felt I didn't want to do that.
Mm.
After a couple of years, I felt like I couldn't see myself doing that 10 years, 20 years down the road
How come?
because it's very draining emotionally.
Oh, sure.
And
Yeah.
especially if you wanted to do a good job of it,
Yeah.
but all the more draining because we have designed the system in a
Yes.
way that is very underfunded.
Yep.
So as a Crown, I had 100 files, and that's insane. Like
Yes, that's a lot.
to do a good job and running trials, I was running minimum three trials in a week.
Uh-huh.
Now I do one trial every 4 months or so average. But
And
over there, I was doing
people don't realize, like, running a trial is a massive amount of
yeah,
preparation, a
yes.
massive amount of adrenaline that you're holding, a massive, like, it sounds like, yeah, 3 trials, okay, got it. So you're in court for 2 days, 1 day, 2 day, but it's ludicrous the amount
It
of
is.
energy that goes into a trial.
Yeah, because I mean,
Yeah.
yes, by government hours, I was not supposed to work beyond 8 hours, but at the same time,
Right.
I knew there's a victim on file. I knew I
Yes,
wanted to do the best
exactly.
possible, especially as a junior Crown, where I'm
Yeah.
still learning the ropes. I needed to put the extra hours just so that I could tell my own conscience that, okay, regardless of the outcome, I did the best I could
Yes.
for this victim, right? So in that sense as well, it was very draining.
I have a question about prosecuting. So that's lots of litigation. You're in court, and um, we operate in an adversarial system, meaning you come forward and argue vociferously for your client's side of the case, and the opposing side argues as kind of like as an adversary, fights against you, and we believe that we find something in the middle that is where the truth lies.
Hmm.
Um, how it may be different now than when you started, but how did you find the experience of standing up? And it's one of a lot of confrontation. The judge is kind of confronting what you're bringing forward. The opposing counsel is basically working to tear down and make your argument sound stupid. Was that something that came naturally to you? Is it something you've had to harden toward? Like, what's been your experience being with that?
Yeah, that's a great question because that's the part that terrifies most people.
Yes,
Even
indeed.
very seasoned, I've seen seasoned corporate lawyers be afraid to go to court
Uh-huh.
even to make a small application.
Yeah.
Uh, I didn't know what it was gonna feel like. I knew I was confident in terms of public speaking, mainly because I trained at it during my undergrad years.
Mm.
But beyond that, I didn't know what it was gonna be like, and it was nerve-wracking, like my
Mm.
first few months, because it's an intimidating environment. I don't know
Yes.
what I'm doing. I'm still learning. So it is literally what they call trial by fire.
Yes.
So I somehow managed to thrive in that still. On looking back, perhaps because to me, this is more challenging. This, what I'm doing right now with you, this is way out of my comfort zone. I've never done anything like this
Right, right,
because
right.
because I am opening up, talking about and ready to talk about almost anything here because
Yes.
that was our understanding in entering into this podcast that you do. So, but over there, it is different. It is not me I'm presenting.
There's
Well,
a
I'm
degree of
presenting, but
removal.
it is the subject matter. It is
Yes.
the subject matter. So the two things about the subject that made it easy for me, which is a, I knew what I had conviction in doing what I was doing meant something to me. That
Aha.
yes, I'm here to prosecute because this is the best chance this victim has at getting a some sense of closure, justice, whatever you want to call it.
Yes.
So I believed in the cause,
Yeah.
to put it simply.
Yes.
And secondly, I prepared myself for the subject matter. Like, okay, doesn't matter how junior I am, as long as I knew what I was talking about, I got the respect of everyone in the courtroom. So
Uh-huh.
as long as I knew what was I had to do, and now I prepared myself to do it, the confidence sort of came naturally.
What is one of your favorite parts about a trial? Like maybe a moment or an experience that occurs during a trial?
Cross-examination.
What is it?
Cross-examination.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Cross
That's probably one of the
cross-examination.
more extemporaneous, like in the moment parts of trial
Yes.
too, right? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yes, it requires you to really know the facts so that you can tell when someone is lying.
Yes.
But to artfully expose that within the confines of rules of evidence and rules of the court
Yes.
is an art.
Yes, indeed.
And over time I became better at it, and it gave me a lot of joy to be able to expose that
Yes.
those lies in those moments, those Perry Mason moments, that okay, wow, okay, this is it, this is my case is done when this guy is saying this, when I
Did
have
you
him saying that on the record.
did you ever enjoy watching mixed martial arts?
No, I've never heard of that even. No.
Oh, well, like UFC, the Ultimate Fighting
Oh,
Championship.
sorry. You. Oh, okay. Yes, yes. I've
Yeah.
seen it. Yes. Sorry. Yes.
Did you ever enjoy watching it?
No, not really. No.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it's fucking. Well, let's make a bunch of noise. There we go. For our viewers at home, what does Adam just put in his mouth? Okay. So the reason I ask is because, granted, it's a combat sport, it's bloody, it's barbaric or gladiatorial. All of that's a valid criticism of it. But the reason I ask is because if you start to understand what's happening physically, it's very much like a cross where each person is vying for like just an inch to then leverage a little bit more. And then the person that is being levered against understands he's trying to move me in this direction because then he
Ah.
get. And so it's interesting because I always saw a lot of um, parallels between the art of a good cross examination and MMA. That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. One thing I find, you go through law school, and of course it changes you because people will say things like, "Oh, I can't believe this lawyer cross-examined this person and did this and said this," and they totally, and it's like that's their job. Like the job of the lawyer is to make the other side look. Um, you'll know the terms better than me, but like untruthful, uncredible, to destroy
Yes.
their credibility.
Correct.
Do you ever struggle with maybe the sort of implications beyond the immediacy of the case with that, or is it sort of like you settle into I'm doing this for the victim and you believe in the system of justice as it is, and therefore that kind of allows you to do what there is to do? Do you
What
understand the?
consequence are you referring to?
Yeah, so like, let's imagine you're prosecuting and you've got someone who's a witness, and part of you tearing down their credibility or imputing their, whatever, requires that you sort of make them out to be a liar or to be ridiculous for the things they've experienced or whatever. That's part of how you take down their credibility. There might be an implication or something that happens as a result of that where they are left feeling or looking stupid or whatever, even though it's best for your case. Do you ever struggle with that?
No, because I'm usually not attacking anyone uh, who is not lying. so so
I see.
so in my mind, if I'm not there to prove a case that is, it's not adversarial in the civil litigation context where both parties might have a legitimate claim to something, or they might
Right.
believe they're entitled to whatever they're fighting over.
Yes.
In a prosecution context, there are so many safeguards in a country like Canada
Mm,
that a case doesn't go to trial without for sure the person being guilty. It's just
right.
whether or not we can prove he's guilty or not beyond reasonable doubt, or in the case of what I do these days, regulatory crimes, balance of probability, whether we can prove that person did it or not. But rest assured, almost always, of course, there are unfortunate, there are cases where there's people are convicted when they're innocent. Very
Yeah.
small number of cases, thankfully, in a
Yes.
country
Yeah.
like Canada. But the cases that I always run across are not cases where the question is not the person. In my mind, at least, there's no doubt this person did something
Mm.
uh, worth prosecuting. It's just whether or not I can prove it within the confines of law.
I see. I see. So you have, we could call it sort of like the benefit of certainty behind your case. You're certain of
Yeah,
what you're.
yeah.
Yeah, gotcha,
Yeah,
gotcha.
especially at whether it's the police or the securities law investigators, when they have collected way more information than
Right.
what I'm even allowed to present in court. So I already have access to all the information that convinces me, okay, no,
Yes.
the wrong has been done. It's just how much of this I can prove.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Okay, well, let's shift with the rest of our time. Let's talk about sort of some of the spiritual path
Yes.
you've been on. So you and I have shared sort of like conversations around plant medicine, specifically ayahuasca. And then you've also been on like some treks and like I think if I've been following your journeys correctly, like maybe some vipassana or maybe some meditation
Yoga.
retreats. So how has that kind of unfolded in your life? How has that come into being, and what's that journey been like?
Yeah, that's yeah. How that ties in is also how our friendship ties in, and that's a beautiful
Yes.
story as well. And the genesis of our friendship is actually a beautiful one one that I haven't actually shared with you. This is the first
Cool.
time I'm sharing this with you. Is so about 5 years back, in the middle of COVID, I was uh, uh, I was feeling very frustrated.
Mm.
I was feeling what you'd call, in lack of a better term, existential angst. Like I had achieved whatever I wanted to achieve in life, and yet I was not happy.
Yes.
I did, but I didn't know why either. It was a confusing situation for me, really confusing. I just was lost, is better lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And I had a hot tub in my backyard where I would just chill with friends, would sit at night in the winter nights in Calgary and watch the stars.
Yeah.
Beautiful way to chill. And one of those friends was Matthew Tom, my
Oh,
roommate
cool.
from law school,
Yeah.
and that I'm still friends with. I mean, he's one of those people I'm still friends with. But you, like, yes, we had a great working friendship during law school. But if during law school, if somebody asked me, who do you see yourself being friends with 10 years down the road? Your name would not have been in
Yes.
that list. But
I
I
think a
knew I
lot
would
of
be
people
friends
would have
with
said that.
Matthew.
Yeah, to be
Sorry?
fair. I think a lot of people would have said that. They were like, that guy's nice and cool and fun, but who I was being was there wasn't a space for that.
No, I didn't mean it to personal to you. It's
I
just
know,
that
but
we
that's what
didn't
I
have
took
that
on.
level of okay.
Yeah.
But our friendship was not like we didn't hang out, say, drinking
Yes.
socially. We just worked together. We had mutual respect for each
Yes.
other,
Yeah.
and we worked well together. That's and we both understood our place in law school a bit better than some of our co-workers,
Yes.
classmates, I suppose. In that sense, we could chat about a few other things, but
Yeah.
that's about it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So and we didn't have any contact, much contact at least since then.
Yeah.
But sitting in that hot tub, Matthew Tom, I was telling Matthew Tom all of this, and then I was how I was feeling. I was feeling like, okay, I'm confused. I don't know what exactly to do and whatever. And and I tried psychologists, seen psychologists, but psychology is so limited, so
Yes.
primitive. And I say that word primitive in the sense a lot of psychologists focus on cognitive therapy. And now it's
Yes.
changing. It is there's a shift. But cognitive therapy is like trying to fix thoughts with thoughts. Doesn't
Yes.
work. And
Yes, indeed.
and especially for someone like me, like and most times I felt like, okay, man, I can already see where you're going with this. Like
Yeah, yeah, you
I
can,
could
you're
think
two
faster
steps
than
ahead
this
of them.
guy. Yeah, so I was like, this is not going to work. If it worked, I could fix myself on my own. So,
Yes.
so, I knew my problem was deeper than this cognitive therapy psychologist that a few that I had seen. So, and again, the confusion was I didn't even know what the problem was. That was
Yeah.
a big part of the confusion. And I heard this podcast and about this ancient plant medicine called ayahuasca in South America. And the first time I heard it on the podcast, I was just shocked, like that this existed and I didn't know about it. Like I pride myself on being fairly well read, and
Yes. Quite
before
worldly
law school,
too.
I used to read a lot more before law school, and I
Yeah,
was
I'll do
surprised
that.
and I was surprised I didn't hear about this amazing thing that people have practiced for thousands of years. And then I read up on my own after the hearing the podcast, and I found wow. The more I learned about it, I was like wow. I was blown away. That wow, this is amazing that this thing exists, and such a gift of seems like a divine gift of nature for humanity. And so I started. Then I was telling Mac that maybe that's something I want to do, but I don't know where, how. I don't want to just take my chances on Google. And then Matthew Tom mentioned, oh, Adam from law school, he just did a Facebook live on this topic, and he was talking about this. I was like, really? That Adam? He did this? I was really surprised because again, the picture of you I have from law school is a very different one from somebody who would do that.
What
So
was the picture
that's
you had of me from law school?
just a like a professional guy who knows what he's doing in life. That typical type A personality.
Yes. It's all
Who's
figured out.
who's or will figure it out or will get what he wants in life. Perfect for a corporate boardroom. Like he would be a
Yes,
CEO of a
totally.
corporate boardroom.
Exactly
So
who it
so
was.
so that's the kind of persona I had, the image I had.
Yeah.
So I was surprised. What he did this and he's talking about it publicly. Like, I was even at that stage of my life. I was afraid to even talk about it privately because I had the typical societal judgment about this kind of things that, oh, this is not kosher, this is not right, this is not legal.
Yes.
Anyways, so I had those. So I was like shocked that Adam is talking about it publicly on Facebook about this. So I went on and I saw your talk that you did, and it was very inspiring. And not just the fact that you were talking about this so openly, but just I could see the transformation in your eyes. That okay, something happened to him.
Something's different.
And that I know this man, I respect this man, and I see this man now, and I still respect him, but I see the shift. And that to me was okay. There is something to this. It's just for, if nothing else, the shift I see in this man that I saw in law school. There has to be something in this.
Yeah.
So that was evidence enough for me to say, hey, I reach out to Adam and say, hey, Adam, I'm thinking of doing this. Can you point me the way? And then the rest of the story. But my point of sharing that story was really that was really the genesis of our reconnection, so to speak. And it wouldn't have happened without Matthew Tom. So
I remember you sharing about math. I didn't know about the hot tub and stuff like that, but I was like, wow, that's cool. Like, what a random connection.
Yeah, beautiful connection.
So when you first drank, to the extent you're willing to share, like, what was the experience? Because everyone has their own sort of idea about it. But of course, the actual experience of drinking and sitting with ayahuasca is quite a lot different than our expectation.
Yeah, so here I'm gonna be a little careful because before,
of course,
in the past, I used to talk about this a lot more openly, and I became more careful about it since then because people misinterpret, especially people who have not. And even if 5 people are listening to this, or how many people are listening to this, I don't. If 5 people could have 5 different images in their head of my experience, but all I can so that's just a caveat I'm putting out there. So before I go into to answer your question, but I would say that. So I'm going to be speaking in more broad terms instead of getting into the nitty-gritty of the experiences. But the experience that back in Costa Rica at that time was both divine, and at the same time, like, it just cracked me open that that whatever notions I had, at that time I still didn't know how to make sense of it. I'm still making sense of many of those things. I'm still on that journey of self-discovery and growth. But at that time, it was like the first crack that, okay, all that I thought about who I was or what this life is or what all of it is supposed to be isn't. So that is the biggest shift that happened for me, was like, no, this is not it. There is something more deeper. There is something more beautiful. There is something more special. What I thought wasn't there. What I thought about myself, what I thought about life, what I thought about other people, none of it was real. It was a fabrication. That was the first realization.
The place I was working with this, there was a lot of, for whatever reason, a lot of Mormons or former Mormons that had been in high control structures, religious in this indication. And in sharing with them and talking about their experience, what they shared with me is like, they were like, all my life, I knew how life was. I understood God. I understood life. I knew it was all very clear and neatly laid out. And they were like, when I drank, it didn't make that wrong. That still existed. It just zoomed, I guess it's zooming like this, out like a much larger picture so that I could see way more around it. And so it wasn't that like I'd been wrong all along or that this shattered and was destroyed, but more like I had much more context to fit that into and could see a much bigger picture. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a cool way to describe that experience. Cause I think often people are very nervous that they'll have to give up some part of themselves. And I don't think that's so much true. It's more that we realize when we can see some part of ourselves in a greater context, we can just use it differently. Or we might be like, oh, I could still do that, but actually over here, this new tool is going to work better, whatever.
Yeah, no, I agree with that as well.
Yeah. Let me posit this and see if there's any color you want to put into it. And if not, that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
But so my experience, generally speaking, and this is for all transformational work, whether it's working with someone like me, drinking ayahuasca, maybe even doing, like Vipassana, silent retreat, a vision fast, whatever it happens to be.
Mm-hmm.
What happens is in life, we as humans learn to fear/resist a particular kind of experience, whatever it happens to be. So it might be like feeling stupid. It might be appearing arrogant. It might be being selfish, whatever it happens to be. And what happens in life is like an oyster building a pearl around the grit. We construct our life so as to avoid that thing that we don't want to be with. So if I don't want to occur as arrogant, I find ways to kind of maybe like second guess or qualify anything I'm going to say so that you don't think I'm being arrogant. And then I build layers of sophistication on this. And what happens is we arrive at this point in life where we don't have to be with that thing, but there's a cost associated with it too. For example, if I want to have a life that's replete with joy,
Mm-hmm.
part of what's going to come along for the ride is a bunch of sadness, because what goes up must come
Yes.
down. And, if I can't feel sadness, I can't really feel the highs either. And so people go and they drink medicine and they're like, I want to feel joy, or I want to, be present to my brilliance. And what happens is I find the medicine gives people an experience of the thing they've been avoiding their whole life. It breaks down this thing, this barrier, this pearl, and then we have to be with this experience of arrogance. And my experience going through that is we fight with it for like a night, 2 nights, till eventually we're like, fuck this, I can't do it anymore, and we surrender into it. And when we surrender into it, we have an experience of, oh, we learn how to be with that thing that we've spent our life avoiding. And on the other side of that, we don't have to put all of that energy into keeping it at bay, to holding it at arm's length. We can just allow that to wash through us like everything else in life. So that's like really, really broad, high level, my experience of how this work kind of unfolds.
Mm-hmm.
Does that match with yours? And or was there something that you had to be with? Or the other way you can answer the question is, what did you find you gained access to on the other side of some of your experience?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I can give you a high level summary of
Excellent.
my revelation, so to speak. I mean, not just from the medicine, but everything that flowed from there.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
medicine that led me to yoga. It led me to work with some amazing therapists who either understand or they themselves trained in the medicine. So and then finally the most important aspect of my life that I'm working with right now is yoga, and all of that ties together very nicely, which is fun at the core of it, that what the medicine showed me and which I'm still working on with all of these other tools that I just mentioned, is the story.
Mm.
We all have stories, and those stories caused some of us caused us trauma.
Yeah.
For me, it was from childhood, teenage years, and so we all have stories. So the meditation showed me the story, but the problem is we have a tendency to stick to that story. We want
There's a
to.
safety in it.
That is me. I am that story.
Yeah.
And I saw that as a prosecutor. That I saw when I, in particularly to take an extreme example, when I saw rape victims, they made they understandably so. That's one of the biggest traumas of their life.
Yes.
In majority of the cases, that became their story. They carried
Yes.
that trauma for
Yeah.
years and years, not just during trial, before that, after that.
Of course.
But then there were those minority people, and that's what I'm getting at, who are able to see the story, hold that trauma with love and compassion, but also see that story is in the past, is gone.
Mm-hmm.
I am here and now. I am this breath.
Mm-hmm.
I am here as is Adam and the whole universe to witness it, and that's it. There is no other story.
Mm.
There are those minority people who are able to achieve that level of healing, and that, to me, that is the core of the healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
That all of these tools that I leads to that okay, recognize the story, feel it, and let it go. Forget it. There is no story anymore. Story is
Right.
irrelevant. It's great to share, like we are sharing right now, and it brings beauty and joy to life. But as long as we're not holding on to it, or making it our story, that this is me. As soon
Mm-hmm.
as I said this is me, I am the story, that's where all the suffering starts. So that is,
Uh-huh.
in a nutshell, my realization so far with all of
Mm.
this.
The lineage of my work and sort of the way that philosophy unfolds for me is that there's to be a human is to create stories. We are meaning making machines,
Yes.
and so we can, through meditation, yoga, and yoga being, there's traditional yoga, the physical asanas, but there's also many other forms of yoga, whatever allows our mind to quiet. These can bring us to those what do they call it, a satori moment, I think, those moments where we're like, here's the emptiness, but then the rest of the time our consciousness is at play and our machine is doing its thing. And so in my lineage of work, we hold it, we're going to have a story most of the time. Is the story that we're working with one that is one we're choosing? And is the story we're choosing empowering? Does it empower me to
Right.
create what's next? Or does it hold me in this particular pattern? And I think it really is important. And I know you feel this way too. None of this is sort of like something people should do. Letting go of our story is challenging. It's very hard because there is a payoff and there is a gravity to it and an entrenchment, and there's something we get out of it. And to let go and to create something new, that takes work, which is why healing is not as easy as popping a pill. It's hard work. And anyone that's ever drunk ayahuasca knows it's fucking hard work.
It is. Yeah, that the two pitfalls that I myself
Mm.
saw sometimes falling into, and I definitely saw other people as well, is one, clinging to the story that I mentioned. That,
Yeah.
oh, that's me, that's me.
Yeah.
That's one pitfall that I myself fell into. I still fall into. Uh, and the other pitfall is that we see all around, which is why society is the way it is. We try to replace that story with a different story. That, oh, because I didn't get this at childhood, now I'm gonna be this.
Yes.
Using examples of people I saw in my life, I'm gonna be this big shot corporate lawyer making lots of money, and everybody's gonna love me for it, or I'm gonna be rich, drive a fancy
Yes.
car, and then everybody's gonna respect me, because we are trying to create another story to replace or to forget rather about that broken
Yes.
story. Instead of healing the old story and forget letting it go properly, we're just trying to replace that story with a different story, at least that one we can project to the world, in the
Yes.
hopes of getting validation from the world that say, oh yes, this is you.
And ironically, we try to, the story we replace it with is a complete fix. It's the opposite. Oh, I was poor and no
Yes.
one loved me. Now I'm rich and everyone does. That's the same
Right.
story. It's just the other side of the same
Right.
box. And so it's
Right.
like,
Because nobody
oops,
loves me.
yeah, it didn't work. Or people love me because I have money. And then,
Right.
but if I, oh, shoot, I'm in prison. Okay. So uh, let's finish up. So what, like you talked about like yoga and like, where is that journey taking you these days? What is that opening, or what's that
Yeah,
exploration
yoga.
like?
Yeah, yoga is magical. It's something I discovered intuitively, as because of the medicine. Like I said, I went, tried it, and then I started feeling this is something different.
Mm-hmm.
And as I practiced, it grew on me, and I realized what it is. And I don't want to go through all the benefits of it, because that's anyone can Google that. But it's not about just the benefits; it's actually experiencing those benefits, right?
Yeah.
And what and why I have so much respect for it is, not everyone has the resource or ability to practice the medicine, or even or have the disposition even
Yeah.
to do this. But yoga is so accessible for everyone,
Yes.
and I felt the teachers training course that I did in Vietnam, that was as powerful an experience as my first time in Costa Rica and Rhythmia, because
Mm.
it was so profoundly powerful that 1 month. I learned more about yoga than I did 3 years or more than 3 years practicing it here in Calgary, because in so many ways it builds that um, everything that we try to build with the medicine. It inherently, the tools in yoga offer that to
Yeah.
build the self-awareness, the still, most importantly, the stillness, to
Yes.
slow things down, to slow down the mind, to make a different choice, to be able to see the story and let it go. All of that is possible with the tools that yoga offers. So that's the journey I'm on right now.
Is there a particular form of yoga that you're practicing or working with?
No, I think in the West we get hung up on those,
Yeah.
because in here we have marketed yoga in different ways.
Yes.
But actually the root of yoga is much more simple than that. It's really just all of it leading to the building the mind body connection and building self awareness. That's at the heart of
Mm.
it, is just self awareness, and everything else that comes with it, which
Yeah.
is being able to choose a better way.
And just see the choice we're already making,
Yes,
which is
yes, that
which comes
being
from our
present.
stillness, slowing down.
Yes.
One of my teachers was sharing, like, meditation is very important. But to your comment about the West, we got all of these stories about what meditation needs to look like and all of that. And she said it very simply. She said, meditation is whatever you do that has your mind go silent. Whatever you do that
Yes.
has you go
Yes.
quiet inside, that's meditation. So that can be going
Right.
for a run when it's raining. It can be getting on an exercise bike. It can be
Hmm.
walking your dog. But we need these practices that allow us to go quiet inside. And that's the heart and soul of it. And
Yes.
of course, we can get very deep into it, and we can practice sitting in zazen and being Zen practitioners, but that's not the requirement. It's
Yeah,
just
that's not the
find
only
ways
way.
to go quiet.
Right.
Yeah. Where are your adventures leading you next? Do you have anything planned? Any trips or any teachers you're planning to work with or anything like that?
No, I'm going. Of course, there are people I'm working with, but yeah, I haven't. I've done quite a few big trips this year. So I've been to the Himalayas with the two wonderful people on a base camp hike. Then this yoga teachers training, and the year before I was in Antarctica. So
Jeepers.
so lot of adventures. So I don't know exactly what is next, but I am just I'm trying to I'm trying to kind of be in the moment more and more, and then flow with that as much
Yeah.
as I can, and while still having some ideas about the future, what I want to do.
Mm.
But yeah, that's kind of where I am right now. One other thing I wanted to mention is, I'm grateful to you as well, for his, like, how my family got involved in the medicine, and
Mm.
you had this conversation with my sister, and that was instrumental in that, and that is another reason that I'm grateful for all of that, and to you.
I was so
So
honored, one, that you'd
yeah,
put us in touch, and two, that
yeah,
she would talk to me, and I found her delightful, and she asked amazing questions, and I was really present to the courage in the lineage of your bloodline. Like, one of the things that's cool about you, Sakeb, is, I mean, you're walking adventure and courage. Otherwise, you would be in Bangladesh doing whatever, or you would be still in whatever. You wouldn't have come
mhm,
here. We wouldn't know each other. And I had the exact same experience of her as with you. And a lot of people would have that conversation with me and then be like, well, that sounds cool sometime, some way. And I think I remember hearing, like, a month later, you guys had come back and it had changed everything. And so, yeah, it's really cool. And thanks for being the caring
yeah,
for her to allow that to,
yes,
to take
and
place.
and I don't know if you knew this, but my mom passed away last year, right?
Oh, I'm so
And
sorry.
yeah, but it was beautiful, because her life, her death, both were so beautiful in so many ways.
Mm,
I'm grateful that I could witness it.
yeah.
But I bring her into this because she also saw the transformation that the medicine brought us, in between me, my sister, and then my brother-in-law eventually, and she herself was in fact wanting to, but by that time
Cool.
the cancer had ravaged her too much that she couldn't experience it. but
Yes.
but I was so grateful that she saw the transformation in me, and yeah, it was just beautiful, all of that.
one of a colleague of mine says that the hallmark of transformation isn't that our lives change, it's that the lives of the people around us change. When
Yes,
we are
yes,
transforming, other people's lives change.
yes,
And of
yeah,
course, the way to cause that is to forget about it and put our attention here, because here's where the
right.
work is. But it's beautiful. It's beautiful to hear that in your story. Okay. I'd love to hear if you have any passing thoughts and also any advice for prosecutors, young prosecutors, or people that are interested in your line of work.
Um, I don't know if I would give advice to prosecutors necessarily, but I would say if anyone, when people often ask me that, oh, I'm thinking of, I want to practice law, and I'm sure you have gotten this from younger
Yep.
people, or sometimes parents of younger people, that I don't, I have an ambivalent answer usually for them, and that's like, uh, not it's not what you think it
Mm,
is what I usually tell them, and that's what I would share is it's if you really are thinking of doing, whether it's a prosecution or just practicing law generally, go out and talk to lawyers, go, and
mm.
I know that sounds basic common sense, but most people don't do that, and most young
That's
people
right.
are don't do that at all. They think what they see in TV shows is what it is, but
Yes.
whether and unfortunately it is not. So uh, it's important to, whether you want to be a prosecutor or whatever corporate lawyer, not judging you for any of that, but you need to talk to those people, find out what their life is like,
Yes.
and then that applies for almost any profession, but law especially so, because it is not an easy profession to pursue. It is
Yeah.
not easy to study.
Very
So
intense.
yeah, it's very intense. It's not for everyone. So it really requires an extra level of conviction uh,
Yes.
to want to do this and to be happy doing it, more importantly.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I find like in the coaching profession, the version of this is that uh people see people that are good at marketing putting themselves out as coaches and then selling that to people, and they're like, well, that person has lots and lots and lots of money, and then they discover that's coaching isn't really what they think it is. They thought it was that.
Right,
Analog to that in law is the TV show. There's no
right,
TV shows about life coaches.
right.
Good thing too. But in law, it's Suits or these shows where it looks very glamorous. And a friend of mine was like, I thought it was just about like having the biggest memory and knowing the most amount of cases and then being the best at speaking. And I'm like, sure isn't. Not at all like that. There is some of that can be there, but that's not really what it's like.
Yeah,
Cool. Well, Sakeb, one, thanks for stepping out of your comfort zone. Thanks for sharing all of that, everything you did, and really, I want to thank you for being in the line of work that you are and allowing yourself to be impacted by the world and letting your heart be opened and like finding spirit in all of this and letting that imbue how you show up in the world. Because I think it's very easy. I won't speak for anyone else, but it's very easy for me in the confines of the many, many pages of legal briefs and squares, spreadsheet cells and stuff. It's very easy for me to lose sight of spirit, in fact, to crowd it out. And so I
hmm,
really acknowledge you for like the depth and the breadth that you bring to your practice. And thank you for the work that you're
thank
doing.
you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, namaste, my friend. Let me see. Is there anything I'm going to plug before we finish up? I don't think so. I think we're going to leave this there. So, everyone, have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in. If you're checking our show out on the podcast and you have feedback, send me an email, adam@adamkwani.com, or you can go to my website, adamkwani.com. Thanks again, Sakeb, and everyone have an amazing weekend. Okay, we're going to end the stream. Click this.